Hi, everybody. It's Thirsty Thursday. Today, Susan, well, first of all, Susan, someone that you and I both love and admire, Rihanna, yesterday, it was announced that she's a billionaire. And it's not because of necessarily her music catalog. It's because of her business acumen with her two Fenty lines for face and body wear, clothing, lingerie. Also, she did it her way, right? She did that 40 Shades of foundation to be inclusive. The lingerie and the clothing is a wider range of sizes. So we're really happy about that. But Susan, my tie-in here, my segue is that I'm sure one of the reasons that Rihanna got to the $1 billion mark was good contracts. How's that for a segue? I'll just throw it over to you.
It's a particular segue. Yeah, I could go on all day about Rihanna and Fenty. I think it's awesome. So many levels of awesome on Fenty. Like if you look at it from a marketing perspective of the way it's been positioned, her packaging, and the fact that everything sticks to each other in your purse, I can keep going. Anyway, contracts. So to set it up, I guess if you follow the news cycle for the last week or so, we've got a bit of a Black Widow scandal going on. Scarlett Johansson has said she's suing Disney over terms of a contract surrounding the movie, in which her contract is structured as she gets a share of the box office. And obviously because of the pandemic and the change of release plans, there wasn't nearly as much of the theater aspect of it. Instead, Disney sold the movie for $30 to Disney Plus subscribers. So this sort of theory is, it was completely different and they couldn't predict what they could because they've literally charged people $30 a movie. And, they're talking about how this model of paying stars on this box office thing is probably old anyway, so it's time to. So I feel like those are different narratives. We need to hear from someone who can give us the legal perspective on this.
Yeah.
So Andrea Henry, friend of C+P and extraordinary business lawyer, is here to chat with us about some of the finer points. Hi, Andrea.
Hi. Thank you so much for having me. I have been talking to everyone who will give me a few minutes about this ScarJo thing, because it's another example of like big corporations essentially trying to throw their weight around. But yeah, first of all, we do have to talk about Rihanna. I've been referring to her as the Bajan billionaire.
Right.
They're from the same country, and so I'm very proud of her. But yeah, absolutely. You can't build an empire without having sound contracts. And the interesting thing for me on the Disney and Scarlett Johansson story was when she filed suit, their response, and this is how all lawyers knew that they were full of BS, because their response was, oh, we've already paid you $20 million and you're showing callous disregard for the pandemic, which has nothing to do with contract law, like zero to do with contract law. And so one, I do think it was a gendered attack, because why else would you disclose how much money she had already made? And I think they were trying to create a narrative that she's being greedy. And enforcing your contractual rights is not being greedy, it's being a smart business person. And then secondly, the whole thing about the pandemic, there are clauses in contracts which address pandemic and like things that are outside of your control. So there's something called a force majeure clause, which if you have it in a contract and you're unable to fulfill your obligations because of something that's outside of your control, then you get to be released from it. But this was entirely within Disney's control, right? Like they could have delayed it. They could have renegotiated with her to give her a share of the Disney Plus proceeds. There were lots of other options that they could have taken. It was not a situation where they had no control and they're like, COVID happened and I don't know. And look at all this other money we have, but you can't have any of it. But I just thought it was really interesting how they threw back in her face the fact that she was wanting to enforce a contract that they, as a multi-billion-dollar corporation with, I'm sure, hundreds of lawyers working for them, had willingly signed.
And everybody could sense that, could feel the tone from the Disney response. They were pissed and they wanted to put her in her place, it felt like. And so when they did call it sad and distressing, when they did make it sound like she was being callous towards pandemic sufferers, when they did disclose that she already made 20 million and she should just be happy, you greedy millionaire, does all of that then feed into perhaps Scarlett being able to call them out for slander or anything like that, because they were insinuating that she was callous, greedy, and the opposite of a hero Black Widow should be.
Exactly. Yeah, there's certainly it opens, defamation's a hard thing to prove, but it opens the door to it. I would imagine that she's got a confidentiality clause in that agreement. And so them talking so openly about her compensation, you know, possibly would be a breach of that. And then, yeah, there are lots of little torts where if she can show that they did that to, for example, blacklist her so that other studios won't work with her, then it's, you know, interference with her economic rights. There are lots of other things that they've opened up themselves to liability to by doing that. And also now she's like championed others. So Emma Stone is considering filing a claim around Cruella, Jared Butler, I believe. The other thing that I found interesting was, I don't know if you remember, I believe it was last year. Time has lost all meaning for me at this point, but I think it was last year when Dave Chappelle's show started to stream and he asked fans to boycott it because he wasn't receiving any part of that. And so it's really important for creatives to think about all the different ways in which their work can be used. Because when Chappelle would have first signed that contract, streaming didn't exist, right? And so they would have negotiated for rights for methods of delivery that were in existence. But you will see for entertainment lawyers and business lawyers who are familiar with that, we'll often write into contracts, we'll give the list of, you know, books, movies, whatever, and any other delivery method now existing or to be created in the future.
Yeah.
Because you want to make sure that if, like, maybe holograms becoming, you know, in sync when we have grandkids, you want to think of as a creative all the different ways that the studio can take advantage of your work, and you want to make sure that you are being compensated, not just for stuff that's obvious right now, but things that could come down the line.
Andrea and Susan, we just have a few minutes left, and I wanted to get in one other topic. You were talking about, Andrea, how it feels like time is all a blur right now. Well, also my viewing habits have become really dodgy during the pandemic. I've been so into the Real Housewives franchise and Bravo TV. And I really wanted to ask you about this. Susan, you've done business with friends. Andrea, I'm sure you've done business with friends. Yeah. And the importance of a contract here to protect you and your friendship is essential. And the example I'll just explain it quickly, then throw it to you two to comment, was Countess Luann was preparing a Christmas single, because she does sing, you know. She asked all the other housewives in New York to come on and do a line in it. And it was going to go out, it was going to make money for charity. Well, Leah, one of the younger housewives, the newer ones, came on and said, "Where's the contract?" And Luann's like, "Don't you trust me? This is for charity. Don't you want to do this for charity?" And it caused a big fight. And right away I was like, "Ooh, Andrea would have so much to say about this." So let's talk about the housewives now, folks.
You know me so well. Also, I love housewives. It was really interesting because it's reflective of what happens in real life. So I work mostly with women entrepreneurs, and the number of people who've said, "I really want a contract, but I'm afraid to give the contract to someone because they're going to think I don't trust them, or they're going to think something negative about me." But Leah was asking really good questions, right? It was like, where is this song coming from? Who owns it? Mm-hmm. Are we sampling somebody else's intellectual property? Am I going to expose myself to liability? How do I know that the money is going to charity? Other questions that she could have asked would have been, am I able to use this song like for my own business purposes or for my own charitable purposes? Are we going to receive an accounting of all the money that comes in? Those are questions that need to be asked. And so, you know, while it's disappointing that Countess, who is a businesswoman herself and really should not have been offended at the question and should have done her preparation ahead of time, you know, I guess my thing is, some people will be upset and you should still do it anyway. You should ask the hard questions and you should require a contract because, you know, for Leah and for the others, like their image is the thing that feeds them. And you can't just allow someone to use it without having very clear boundaries.
I think following a base minimum of like, here are the things that we need to educate ourselves about so that we're able to navigate that discussion with some intelligence, like park the emotion for a second.
Exactly.
Awesome. Andrea, thank you for joining us today for Thirsty Thursday here. Everyone, you can check her out on Instagram at Henry Business Law, or you can find her on LinkedIn and Facebook as well, Andrea Henry. Susan and I are going to continue on with a few other topics, Andrea, but we'll let you go. For those of you wanting to hear the other ones, watch out for the podcast version of this tomorrow. Thanks, Andrea.
Thank you so much for having me. Bye.